If you think about your time leading Atwell as if it were a chapter in the firm's larger story, what would you call it? Is it from regional to national or making growth sustainable? What would be the name of the chapter?
You know, it's funny. We, as we've grown, I've been there 27 years now in the organization, really since I graduated college, and, have had the opportunity to see the firm grow and see it get a little smaller, go through some of the rougher times in 08, 2010, and then continue to grow. I think change-oriented is probably one word that would describe a chapter from me really stepping up more into a leadership role and continuing to grow the organization.
Welcome to Morrissey Goodale's Word on the Street podcast, where it's all things AE.
I'm Mark Goodale, he's Mick Morrissey, and you are watching Morrissey Goodale's Word on the Street podcast. Mick, it's an honor sitting next to, I guess now the number 3 golfer in the world.
Yeah, handicap down to 19.9, which I think is pretty much puts me at the pro level.
Yeah.
I haven't checked that yet, but all indicators would be that's where I'm headed.
Do you have to get a card or something? Isn't there something about a card to be on tour?
I need a cart to be on tour to ferry me around.
And a credit card, I would think, would suffice.
Could be.
Okay.
Could be. Yeah.
Well, you got it covered.
Yeah. I have to say,
yeah,
I'm super excited about our guest today.
Indeed.
He's not only the president of a firm that is the recipient of a 2025 Excellence in Acquisitive Growth Award for Best Post-Transaction Performance.
Yep.
But he's also the president of a firm that's been on our top 10 movers and shakers list now for 2 years, 2024 and 2025. We've never had such a president on the podcast before.
Outstanding. And this very special guest is, drumroll, Matt Bissett, president of Atwell, currently firm number 70 on the ENR Top 500 list. Atwell is one of the industry's premier firms, and they specialize in real estate and land development, power and renewable energy, and oil and gas. And Matt, welcome to the street.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me, boys. Appreciate the opportunity to sit in front of you.
Yeah, it's, when we first got together with Matt, this feels right. Seeing you in 2D is more natural for us than in 3D. We remember first meeting Matt in our virtual reality event that we had for CEOs years and years ago, right around the COVID era, if I recall. But it's a pleasure to have you, Matt, and good to see you on a screen in particular.
Indeed.
Yeah, I was actually excited. I'm assuming in the virtual world your jokes are better than they are.
Yeah, wait for it. They're coming.
Yeah, assumptions are really not your friend on this podcast, Matt.
So Matt, we've got a bunch of questions for you, and would love to get your take on a whole bunch of things. And we've got a long list of stuff. We'll get through as much of it as we can before you actually have to run out. But if you think about your time leading Atwell as if it were a chapter in the firm's larger story, what would you call it? Is it from regional to national or making growth sustainable? What would be the name of the chapter?
It's funny. We, as we've grown, I've been there 27 years now in the organization, really since I graduated college, and, have had the opportunity to see the firm grow and see it get a little smaller, go through some of the rougher times in 08 and 2010, and then continue to grow. I think change-oriented is probably one word that would describe a chapter from me really stepping up more into a leadership role and continuing to grow the organization, really like around thinking bigger. Those things have really kind of come to mind from when I joined the organization back in '98. We were a 60-person, 2-service, oriented professional consulting firm that really practiced in the land development space. And as we grew the organization and as the markets grew around us, the ability to kind of think a little bigger and think outside of our world, that we could continue to solve problems for clients out there that were not just within a 25-mile radius or not within 2 services that we do. We can think about, adding great intellectual capital and other elements that really embody, the land development cycle. And so those things probably embody who who we've really been over the last 10 years and made it so exciting to kind of be part of.
Yeah, it's interesting. You said the word change early on, and you've got to be able to manage that, lead that. It's part of the job. It seems almost like from day one. Can you talk about that a little bit? How you manage change? Is that a challenge? Do you have to do that quite a bit? What's it like?
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I mean, we work almost 95% in the private sector, right? So every community you go into, there's a, different obstacle you need to approach. There's a different NIMBYism in some capacity when you're trying to get through the entitlement process. There's, individual nuances of employees where, younger employees have different needs than older employees, and, individuals that have different career goals or career aspirations as opposed to some others that may just be coming in to 9 to 5, put food on the family or food on the table for the family, right? And so,
Right.
individually, you got to think differently for all those different elements and be prepared for that element of change, right? In terms of the staff that you hire, the markets you entry, the services you offer, how you approach a job. Markets go up and markets go down, right? That's inevitable. And, organizations, as you watch evolve, for me, it's interesting to see like Kodak, for example, and recognizing some of those things that maybe they didn't do to adapt to change as digital mainstream came into play, right? So for me, I kind of embrace it. I look at it many times as an opportunity. I maybe have learned that through 2008, that if I'd been that individual that put my head in the sand and didn't accept that the world was changing, that there was different drivers in the space, that there was different dollars being put in different areas, that they weren't the same as what they were in 2000 to 2005, probably wouldn't be here today, to be honest with you. It's one of those life lessons that I don't think goes away, particularly in what we do as a consulting, industry over the next 20 years, right? It's simply just every 5 to 10 years, there's a material kind of spike that sends us a little sideways, and we've got to be essentially engaged enough to know what to do and how to react and how to do it for the best interests of all our employees.
Yeah, I think, Matt, just to stay on that for a little bit, anybody who has come late to the Atwell story is aware of the acquisitions that you've made. I want to get back to that a little later. Is aware of your growth. I think for those of us who are in the industry and observers of the industry, you're an incredibly successful firm. But that wasn't always the case, right? So 2008, 2009, those were challenging times for a lot of firms in the industry. Many firms never made it beyond 2008, 2009 and the crisis. We've been talking here about change. I think all CEOs had to talk about change, particularly those over the last 10 years, because many of the changes have been relatively easy to make because balance sheets have been strong and outlook has been strong. In 08, 09, can you tell us about some of the changes that you had to make to get through as Atwell and make it to the other side?
Yeah, it was certainly an educational process, and frankly, probably made me who I am today. It grounded me in certainly the humility aspect that the phone does stop ringing some days, right? As much as we love our clients that we rely upon, that are relationships that maybe are 10, 20 years, at some point they stop writing checks, right? So that was a harsh awakening in that capacity. But if you think back in the organization since 1905, we really have been an organic growth organization, right? Right from through a leadership change or ownership change in the 50s and ultimately in the 70s, and then the late 90s when the third generation of ownership group kind of transitioned away. We really kept that growth model in terms of hiring from individuals out of college, hiring interns, be aggressive on strategic hires, looking for ways to solve client problems that were in the industry. And you really just assumed that the market was going to continue to grow. I mean, you had, a little bit of the tech bubble in 2001. You had some housing issues in the 80s and so forth that kind of caused some delays there. I wasn't personally around in that space, but as we got into 2008, for me, I just didn't see the world stopping. I seen people graduating college. I seen people renting an apartment, then buying a house. They were continuing to put jobs out there, and you were almost numb to it. You really didn't even think about it. And at one point, the phone stopped ringing, the clients stopped paying. you still had payroll to make. You still had employees that showed up every single day. And, one of the more pivotal turning points in my life was in 2007. I individually had to sit across the table from 60 professionals and tell them I failed them. I quite frankly wasn't able to put projects in front of them for them to work on, and they had to go home. And I said to myself at that year, I was never going through that again. Ultimately, I was going to look for ways, to make friends in different marketplaces, look for ways to solve problems, not just get a job, not just get a contract, look for ways to develop relationships, not have transactions in some capacity. We went through 3 years where we didn't take paychecks as owners, right? So we ultimately sacrificed for the betterment of at the time, 135 professionals, because we felt like, and we believed in our story coming out of it. And I think we were probably a little more realistic, maybe even ahead of the marketplace in terms of how bad it really was, and really started to materially look for niche urgent industries that could help us pull through. And, that was a big pivotal moment when the energy industry was starting to really take shape, particularly around renewables in that time frame. Our bank and a few other folks that are pivotal to kind of that next growth platform, or who we were, believed in our ability to solve problems in a different space than the land development world. And that really helped us get through that world, that time frame.
Matt, it's sticking with change. And you mentioned earlier how you have to adapt. And when it comes to big disruptors, there's always talk about technology and talent shortages and all that kind of thing. But sometimes the real shifts can sneak up on you quietly. What's something you think is coming for this industry that most people still aren't talking about just yet?
Well, there's certainly talk about AI. There's talking about ChatGPT and Copilot and leveraging certain technology, innovative platforms. And I don't know. We say the words, but I don't know if we really embrace or take in what meaningful opportunity it is for us as professional consultants to embrace it more into what we do every single day. And most people in the organization will probably laugh at me a little bit because I'm a little behind on some technology platforms. But, if you think about the trillions of dollars being sent in the industry, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's data centers, power, water resources, natural gas, water, wastewater treatment plants, they're simply we're just not graduating enough professionals out there that need to be in place over the next 10 to 15 years to solve those problems, right? There is going to be, clients of ours in the space that are going to look to get projects built, bring an asset to life, and we're not going to be able to, as an industry, provide those resources. So we really got to dig a little under the hood and really start to figure out how we can mitigate or migrate that technology, those kind of artificial platforms, into our businesses and help them be more efficient, not be scared about what it does for our job growth, not be scared about our ability to do the same thing day in and day out, not be so scared to sit behind the CAD machine, but maybe you're directing, a software platform to produce twice as much work out there, right? So those are things, we say a lot of words around it, and I know you guys are do a great job of kind of bringing it forefront, but I'm not sure as an industry, when you think about 40 to 43,000 AE firms out there, it's a relatively small percentage that are really embracing that.
Yeah, that is true. And that's what we see, I think, Mick, in terms of AI and technology. It's here. There was a big furor about it, and now it's sort of water is finding its level a little bit, and it's starting to slow down. And I think that's opening the door for some thoughtful firms to take advantage.
I'm looking forward to the day when I'm like a mirage sitting here doing this. I'm sitting in Italy and doing this podcast, and I'm really not staying. It's like
how do we know you're not, actually? How can we prove that this isn't already happening?
Yeah.
Maybe this is what's sneaking up on us.
Sticking with the mirage theme, Matt, you're many things. Indeed, I like to think of you as a Renaissance man in many ways. Like you're a surveyor, right? You graduated as a surveyor.
I did, surveying engineering affairs.
You're a movie star. I don't think there's any, that's overstating it. You're a movie star, an actor of great renown. You're a world traveler. I think if anybody wants to know anything about Italy, you're the Rick Steves of the engineering industry when it comes to Italy, right? I mean,
I do love going over there for cycling. So
Tuscany, you're a cyclist. There's probably a Tour de France in your future, but also you're a quadruple threat in that you are the president of a firm that is probably one of the most skilled, most thoughtful, and most accomplished acquirers of other firms in the industry. And congratulations again on Atwell being a recipient of the Best Post-Transaction Performance Award this year. Can you tell me about your evolution from surveyor to acquirer, and just how important the team is around you in bringing these firms into Atwell and creating something much more powerful than existed before you make an acquisition? You've made something like 30 acquisitions since 2007.
yeah, I'll tell you. I mean, I'm actually ironically not a huge fan of doing M&A. I really enjoy meeting individuals out in the marketplace that I always quote as being smarter than me, right? Individuals that I think a little differently, have the ability to solve a problem, have a little bit of a relationship element, have a technical acumen that can add value to a project or a job or a program or whatever it may be. And the ability for me to show them a path from a career standpoint that might be a little bigger or more opportunistic with our platform is really what I enjoy doing the most. The funny thing is, as you continue to get more in the industry and you develop relationships and you figure out that there's really good firms out there kicking your butt in many cases, is instead of them constantly fighting against you, you start to make friends with them. And ironically, many firms out there are struggling in the fact that, they're the rainmaker, they're the Superman. They run a 20 to 30 person shop and they just quite can't get out of their own way in terms of, trusting that next professional to take on more responsibility. So it gets a little bigger, and it's a scary world, right? I mean, you're ultimately kind of leveraging your skill set out and then letting some other have some runway, and you don't know where that runway is going, right? It's an element of control you don't always feel. And, from a surveyor perspective, you tend to get a little broader look because for us as surveyors, we get involved in the early part of a project, we get in the mid part of a project. As we answer design related questions, we get involved in the later stage and we see projects get built. And so for me, the development life cycle gives me the opportunity to talk for professionals that run singular service-oriented organizations or singular geographic market organizations, that they can think a little bigger for the best interest of their employees. And so it's funny, out of the 30 deals we've done, I think close to 25 to 26 of them have been non-broker related deals. They've simply been just firms that have been competitors for us in different spaces. And we were able to get to know them, understand what some of their challenges are, understand that they're looking for a way to create some opportunities for their employees. They maybe had a younger workforce. They know that they're going to want to take on more responsibility, and they struggle that the fact that they think eminently there might be another downturn at some point in the future, and they might not have the resiliency or wherewithal to kind of get through that. And they want to do what's best for their employee base, right? And they want to create opportunities for them. And our platform might give them that opportunity. And ironically, you get a little trust built up and you start showing them some of those opportunities. It really resonates to a great solution at the end of the day. So, I mean, it's fun right now. I love doing acquisition work because you meet great people.
Yeah.
It gives you the opportunity to surround yourself with much more people that are intelligent in terms of what their sphere of influence are, or what their skill set is. And then you could take that and leverage it up on a little greater platform.
Matt, I was with a strategy client in the Seattle area, and just actually hours ago, not even days ago. And what I said to the group when we finished after 2 days of slogging through and creating a strategic plan and all the work that went into it, which took a couple of months of gathering information, and it was a bit of a process, and we were all very happy with the outcome and very energized. And my message to everybody around the table was, congratulations. This has been a fairly long and complex road, and we've fought our way through it and got to a really good place. And that really good place is the starting line. We've just gotten started. And you can look at M&A the same way. You find your firm, you go through the whole deal process, and you finally get it done. And it's like, great, we got to the starting line. And then integration happens. And integration can look real clean on paper, but can be messy in real life. Is there something you can share with us that you've learned about keeping a newly acquired firm's identity intact while you're still building one Atwell, which I would assume is important for you and the firm?
Absolutely. I mean, we look at our pillars of the organization being around the entrepreneurial spirit, solving client problems, creating opportunities for employees, leveraging our platform in many cases, doing good quality work, being responsive, focused on urgent industries, being, focused around that land development cycle in many cases. And, we really look to find leaders that really embody that. I mean, that for us it makes the integration way easier when you have like-minded professionals you're doing business with that believe that they're doing a job for the best interests of all their employees, not just them individually, right? And so, integration for us really starts with the people first, right? We ultimately need to have the leadership believe that they're making this decision, because it allows their employees to have room for growth. It allows their clients that they do business with to maybe push and expand what they do with that particular group in a little bit larger platform. Take a Lowe's or a Walmart that does work with a group in Chicago, and now maybe that same group can do work in California or do work in Texas and leverage those same leadership professionals in many cases. So it really starts with the leadership side, and knowing that they have the ability to make decisions. They still have autonomy. They still have the ability to, do what's in the best interest of their employees. And then second to that, doing what's best for the employees, creating opportunities for them in that very short amount of time, particularly in that 6 to 9 months coming out of closing the deal, so we can get a little momentum on the energy side of it, right? This is all about energy and enthusiasm, right? You get people to smile, they get people love what they're doing. They may have loved it pre-acquisition, but when they see a greater opportunity to develop their personal skill sets, their professional skill sets, their financial, position where they're at in the world, and we give them a platform to do that, maybe with better benefits, maybe with a little bit more career growth, maybe a little more responsibility level. They manage a team of 5. Now they get the opportunity to manage 2 teams of 5 in 2 different demographic areas, get exposed to some different industries, right? Maybe they were a singular commercial service provider. Now they're doing work for the data center market or renewable energy. So that energy enthusiasm is very spiderweb like, right? If it gets into a company that you're integrating into an organization, and you get a couple people that are influential and they start talking to each other, it just spreads like wildfire. And it's really kind of powerful and positive at what it does for the long-term kind of integration and longevity of how that deal works.
Matt, you yourself project a lot of positive energy. Atwell as an organization projects a lot of positive energy. Trying to connect the two here, how much of your time is spent visiting other offices or your offices beyond Michigan? How much of your time is spent on the road engaging with clients and conveying that positive energy to them?
Yeah, I'm unfortunate. I mean, we've got 75, 80 leaders in the organization that are really embodied around energy, enthusiasm. They love what they do. They love the private sector. They love the clients we do business with. So, I really don't have to spend a tremendous amount of time in other offices. Our culture is really driven around the individual leader in those offices or in those teams, right? And so, there's many cases we'll get our senior leadership team together at least once a year, sometimes twice a year or 3 times. We'll get them in different locations. And so we're exchanging ideas. We're being strategic. We're looking for opportunities to grow. We're looking for opportunities to expand. We got client issues there. So we're very much a very one bottom line organization. So team orientation, working together kind of behooves itself in that capacity. I love spending time with clients. I probably spend 30 to 40% of my day, even today, mainly because I want to be engaged enough to know what's going on in the industry to help my leadership team make decisions of where to put resources to work, where they want to put investment of their time in terms of growing the company. There's many cases you'll put a lot of investment in a particular space or a geography that doesn't always pan itself out, right? It doesn't for one reason or the other, there's not the same spend you thought there was there.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some additional roadblocks. It's not always individually easy to call time out, reflect upon that, and then say, we got to pivot and look for some other way to spend our time, right? Because at the end of the day in the consulting business, time is your greatest adversary, right? It is the one limiting factor that if you don't maximize it to the greatest ability and think about it in terms of a return on investment kind of theory, right? You're not doing justice for your organization, right? Every hour has to be has the ability to be influential across thousands of people if you do it right, and our leadership team does a really good job of believing in that.
Mick, you mentioned positive energy, and it's really in the DNA and those leaders that you have, Matt. And I'll give you an example of that energy and enthusiasm, and working on that great Top Gun program that you have to develop leaders, your leadership program. I don't think there's a person on planet Earth who doesn't like Rodney Williams. How could you not like that man? It's literally impossible to dislike him. And there's lots of folks like that in the organization.
Can you, for the viewers, just talk about Top Gun and Rodney Williams? Just explain those, please.
Rodney Williams is a one of a kind, right? He's one guy that never does not have a smile on his face. He's very inspirational. In fact, probably taught me one of the most, important lessons in my life, particularly as it relates to being a male. That he told me one day, and I think he took it as a quote out of a book somewhere, but to understand, not be understood, is ultimately one of those skill sets when you think about relationship building, makes you a better listener, understanding what problems exist and drivers, stuff like that. But Rodney leads up kind of our talent acquisition team and talent management team in terms of making our employees better at what they do, the mentoring and development programs, investing and engaging in our employee base so that, that where they're at today, they can be different in a year from now, right? In a better place and adding more value to the organization and their people around them. And, Top Gun's really a impetus around continuing to do that. But, for me, I maybe kind of stole the idea from the Pulte Holmes group back in the 90s, where they took great leaders and made them better, right? They were really good folks. They really did a nice job within their sphere of influence. And we were able to expose them to some outside advisors, some inside professionals, folks like myself and other senior leaders that have gone through different experiences, take them a little deeper under what an income statement, a little deeper around what a balance sheet is, a little deeper in terms of the things they're doing at a project level and what it means at a corporate level, and how that integration or influence between the two of them is so integral as you grow, and what it means in terms of, trusting your partner beside you as a teammate and allowing them to have a little rope to walk the shoes that you're doing every single day, and trusting in the fact that if you do what you do, you can do it differently tomorrow, right? And let them do what they're doing for you, and just continuing to grow around that mindset. And so Top Gun's been a really influential leader in taking those professionals that are maybe managing for us $10, $15 million of work. And we believe that over the next 2 to 3 years, have the ability to double that and really be not necessarily having more direct reports, not necessarily more employees, but just be influencing the organization in a way that's in a greater capacity. So Rodney's been a great ambassador to really shepherding that through and seeing it come to its success.
Well,
you guys have been streaming.
Well, it's been a lot of fun playing a small part of that and watching these great folks get some great business lessons and life lessons through the program. And this is the kind of DNA. Every firm has DNA in it that really should never change, but some probably should. You've talked about, I believe you've talked about some of that DNA that I suspect you want to make sure it stays part of Atwell's culture. Is there anything that you want us to that you could see leaving behind at some point, part of the culture that you'd like to actually leave behind?
Timesheets?
Yeah.
I mean, that'd be
Amen. Hey, God bless you.
I remember, Matt, timesheets were, it was what was going to solve the whole issue when we were writing them by hand was when we finally had the electronic timesheets. Well, then it was going to be 100%. Everybody was going to, everybody was going to submit right on time. Matt, too, when I want to go back to this one firm kind of idea, and you've got people in tons and tons of locations now across the country. And while the logos match, sometimes culture can drift. What's something that you do or something that the firm does that keeps everyone feeling connected to Atwell?
Well, I mean, again, one bottom line really resonates throughout the organization around two principles. Our two principles that we've stayed true to over the 27 years is solving client problems and creating opportunities for employees, right? Those two things really embody the decisions we make in terms of geographies we go into, firms we get to talk to, services we diversify into. All those things really, you think about a business plan going forward. If it isn't in alignment with that, we're more than likely not going to do it, right? And so as you're looking in the organization, sharing resources is a real testament to solving a problem in many cases, right? Projects are getting bigger. They take more capital. They take more resources. Sometimes they take different intellectual capital that has to be applied because of the particular geographic region they're in. Maybe there's an individual nuance in terms of a waterfall issue or a wildlife issue that you have to bring a species expert in, right? That maybe sits in Boston, but the project's in Wyoming in some capacity. So our employees have the ability to leverage those technical skill sets across other parts of the country without worrying about an overhead burden or worrying about an administrative cost, to cost back to where the employee was at. So it really does keep the culture alive in terms of always staying grounded to solving a problem and not having a limitation internally, right? That's one of my greatest fears, I guess, is that I love the entrepreneurial spirit part of the organization. We've got, I think, close to 450 project managers in the firm today that are seller doers. And so they have the rope to be that entrepreneurial spirit. And at some point, though, you have, as the firm grows, you've got to take in the risk management side of it, right? So you start to put processes in place, procedures in place, and those things get larger and get more important as projects get larger, and there's different element of risk to them associated with it. But you got to balance that with keeping that entrepreneurial spirit, so that people feel like they can wake up today and make a phone call and maybe call a small firm of Amazon in 2000 and ride them till 2025. And now they're a multi-billion-dollar organization doing $20 million with you, right? So that's what the power of a relationship and solving a problem and helping clients evolve and helping clients get promoted really does for you. And I really do not want to see that part go away at the organization, no matter how big we get. It's such a powerful tool from a employee growth standpoint, right? It's why I am at the position today, because I put myself out there, put a foot forward, made a phone call, made a couple friends. Those friends like to spend money, and they kept spending money. And if you're in the middle of it, it tends to have good results for a lot of us, right? Not just myself. So
you asked the question, Mark, about this commitment to One Atwell, and
right.
In our strategy work, we try to get firms to commit to this one firm concept. And everybody kind of agrees to it when they see it on paper, but then many leadership teams don't walk the walk or walk the talk. I have to say, from my perspective in observing Atwell, the commitment on the part of the leadership team to creating and sustaining and building a One Atwell concept really struck or resonated with me or became clear to me during the pandemic, when Atwell, like many other firms, had multiple offices and it was hard to get people together. Atwell made a huge investment in getting everybody on virtual reality. They made a huge investment in replicating in virtual reality their home office, which they had built to bring people together and learn together. And they used that crisis at that time to foster even more connectivity across all of their offices. Some of the offices were in states that everybody was in the office physically. Many of them were in states that they couldn't be in the offices physically. And so they brought their team together when many of their competitors and peers didn't. And it was a huge investment. And I believe it's just another testament to this commitment.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys were pretty helpful back then. I think you helped me create the virtual room, but got more feedback on that virtual reality room to do team meetings in. individuals that sit in different locations. I mean, the energy market's one of those ones that all our professionals sit everywhere in the country, particularly work together because projects tend to go a lot of different geographic platforms. And but funny because most, you got engineers that tend to get on the little older side. They don't really adapt to technology. And really, I think we had at the time 250 professionals that all got Oculus for Christmas.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Say, I got
That's
more
right.
emails wondering what the heck to do with this thing and how it be. And then it's funny is that about a month and a half later, after a few people figured it out, I got more comments about hanging in a virtual room and how more comfortable they were with that than traveling to office than they ever thought.
Yeah. Didn't you set up bowling alleys and stuff for
You
folks
did, yeah,
in the
game
office?
rooms, yeah.
By the way, our producer Tim Pettipit is here with us. For that engagement, Tim became essentially a shipper for Oculus, and at one point, I think Oculus was wondering what the heck we were doing, ordering hundreds and hundreds
Yes.
of
We're cornering the market in some way. Yeah, that was that was a lot of fun.
That was a huge commitment. I mean, that's the thing I wanted to get across here.
Yeah.
That it's the leadership team walks the talk, and I personally believe, from observing the firm in action, that's what makes you. That's one of the factors that really makes your acquisitions as successful as they have been, because it's bringing everybody together, looking for the opportunities, focusing on the clients and focusing on the people.
Yeah, and Mick, to your point, I think it's knitting the fabric of the firm together, and whether that's done through virtual reality or lean coffees or whatever it might be, Matt, I think that's been something that's been a real successful recipe or formula for you.
Yeah, I mean, and certainly humility has an aspect that really comes through our senior leadership team. They're available, right? They're engaged. They want to, they recognize that they're not there. We love what we do as a leadership team. It's fun every day to wake up and go to work. It's kind of a crazy thing to say when you're 30 years ago that you didn't want to do, but we love what we do. But we also recognize that we wouldn't be there if it wasn't for the 2,200 folks that also show up every day. And, you owe them that time to give them the opportunity to sit in your shoes at some point in the future. And I'm a big believer that you typically grow your skill sets through exposure and experience. I mean, technically, you can learn a lot through school and you can learn a lot through continuing education, but watching your peers and not only internally, but externally, the decisions they make, why they made the decisions, taking in data points to make better decisions, see gravitate and motivate and change through tough times and good times and things of that nature. That's where you really kind of learn who you are. And if the more you maximize that, you have the potential to take it limitless in many regards, right? So for me, being available for all those employees in terms of taking a phone call, grabbing breakfast, having a coffee, it has the opportunity to be inspirational, empowering, motivational for them, where they go back and they talk about it with their 5, 10 other teammates that are in the office. And that's an energy that you continue to, take advantage of, as an organization.
Yeah, Matt, it's interesting. You talk about how you feed off of one another and how you observe your peers and you connect. In this industry, we can look inward quite a bit, but a lot of innovation comes from outside. Logistics, healthcare, tech, and so forth. Is there an industry or two that you watch because you think AE firms like yours could learn from it?
Yeah, it's funny. Industries are one thing. I'm a big believer around sports. I'm a sports junkie, right? So I cycle and so forth, but unfortunately, I love the Detroit Lions football team. God help me over the years, right? And that cost me, but I'll take it today. But, there's something to be said about the way the NFL runs their contracting process, right? I mean, You got to show up every day. You got to add value. As a consulting organization, we owe it to our clients to give them the best product that they're paying for. And the NFL does that through great contracts. And if you're not delivering, you go home, right? Some cases you get signed for a 1-year contract, you're not providing value. You don't have a job the next day. And I think all of us need to keep that in mind, right?
Yeah.
We can't get complacent. A client is hiring us to solve a problem. And that doesn't mean the problem has to be solved the same way we did it 1 year ago one day ago, or 10 years ago, right? We need to look for different ways to be innovative and utilize tools to maybe bring a different value to them that can be transformational for them as they grow their program, right? And so that, to me, from you think about sports, does a really nice job of evolving over time as players get faster, individuals get bigger, the game changes, the rules change, and they continue to adapt and make the product better. We need to follow that in many regards.
Now that's a very, very interesting comment, and I also like how you say you have to earn your place on the team every day. You have to earn your place with the client every day, and so I can definitely see the parallels. And when things get tough on teams in the NFL, let's say, they might have a muscle that they can flex when the game isn't going their way or the season isn't going their way. If the bottom dropped out of the market, if we hit tough times, is there a muscle that Atwell could flex, whether it's client relationships or diversification or agility? What's Atwell's version of the Lions losing the first game of the season, but flexing to be undefeated since?
I think diversification, if anything, from '08, John told us that, at the time we were primarily a land development firm, and then, continued to focus on diversification. And, the energy industry is for us, both on the power and utility side, as well as hydrocarbons and oil and gas, where, that expansion of that. Diversification is probably our flex muscle, right? I mean, not all individuals out there have to, spend money in respect to bring assets to life. It doesn't mean that, they're going to continue to build retail stores, they'll continue to put rooftops out there. But, there's certainly industries that are continuing to expand and develop where dollars are being shifted from one space to the next. And that means something potentially for us, right? There's a real estate dream that has a inspiration around a greenfield piece of dirt that's going to become an asset that provides some value someday. And many services that we provide are transferable to those spaces if we can make the right friendships, right? So you have to believe in the same foundation you did when you created that relationship 10 years ago with the individual that's not spending any money anymore, right? And so you got to identify a problem. You have to listen. You ultimately have to talk to them about how your firm potentially can solve that problem in a greater capacity and help them grow, right? Can help them not only on one job, but can help them on a multiple element of jobs and maybe multiple geographic elements through your approach, and thinking about it in terms of the developer's eyes, not just the community's eyes at some point. So you're balancing a lot of elements there. So diversifications probably for us is that flex muscle that allows us to shift resources around to work on projects when industries are down in some capacity. And it allows us to keep jobs for those professionals that, if we were just a one-trick pony, would probably go home. We wouldn't be able to support them. We wouldn't be able to continue to, make them, at least make our obligation to them available so that they can work every single day. So for us, that diversification is pretty meaningful there.
Yeah, it's been proven time and time again through different economic cycles. Diversification, intentional diversification, is what allows you to sleep at night. Yes. If you can do it well. But it ain't easy, and certainly if you're a mile wide and an inch deep in one market and super deep in another market, if you're a latecomer in that first market, you're going to get hit when that goes away. So you got to make the investment to diversify. And we saw this a lot going back to '08 again, and this is probably the episode we've gone back into history and tried to talk about the lessons of '08 more so than any other episode. But if you look at '08, '09, architecture firms, they didn't go through a recession. They got essentially, they ran into a buzzsaw. But for the architecture firms that made it through '08, they diversified into the Middle East and into the emerging New East markets, which was a big risk. But that diversification allowed them to make it through. Right. So diversification takes on many different forms, right? It's geographic, it's market type, it's services offered. And when you're doing an acquisition, you don't want to make an acquisition which brings all three of those new to you, because you just can't manage all three. It's got to be intentional. It's got to be well managed. Got to take this.
I like, and certainly on the acquisitions, I like to have a choice, right? I'm not looking to just add revenue. I'm looking to add intellectual capital, somebody that can bring a different perspective, maybe a different industry, maybe a different client base, maybe a smaller client base that has the ability to be leveraged up, right? It has to be different. It can't be the same of what we're always doing. We know what we can do in that capacity, right? So somebody that challenges status quo and makes the organization think differently over the next 5 years, those are the deals I really enjoy getting involved in.
Yeah. You know, this talk about flex makes me think I have to go back to my fantasy football team and make sure I've got all my buys covered for the week. Matt, you are lucky that I don't have anybody from the Lions on my team. When I select a football player, it's usually within the first half that they're going out on a stretcher. So you don't want to be an NFL player and have me draft you. It's not a good sign.
Don't draft any Lions on the waiver wire.
Yeah, exactly. I'll just leave them be, and you should be fine. So let's start to wind down here, and we appreciate your time, Matt. And it's now time for Word to the Wise, your favorite segment.
I love this.
You love this.
The rest of the podcast.
Yeah, we should just do Word to the Wise and just shut it down.
Can we do it in Italian? Matt, would you speak in Italian? I can respond.
Ciao.
Yeah.
Okay, ciao. Brilliant.
So, Matt, we often talk about what we've learned to do. What's something you've learned to stop doing and life got better once you...
Well, it's funny is that I go back to sports again, and maybe this isn't I stopped doing, but it essentially did cause me to stop doing things. As many quarterbacks out there will tell you, they really go from being good to great to legendary when they slow the game down, right? And they, as fast as the game is and as fast as it gets better or gets every single year, the players get stronger, they get faster, they get more investment in training, and it just continues to go there. Yet the great ones slow it all down, right? And they are able to look across the defense and make better decisions to minimize errors, minimize bad direction, and they're going to make a mistake every once in a while, but they're learning from it, right? For me, slowing the game down 3 or 4 years ago really helped me make better decisions and helped us as an organization understand and think 3 or 4 steps ahead of time, where maybe we weren't always doing that back in the early 2000s, right? There's ultimately going to be a counterbalance of whatever decision you make, right? I always tell people, look at all the spreadsheets you want on the results of the group. Those results are history, right? They're a product of a decision you made or direction you chose at a time when you thought it was right. Don't regret it. It's just a decision you made. Now you got to learn from it. Use the results to make better decisions going forward. Don't blame anybody. You're the one that set the direction. So when you slow that game down, you can start to see that. You can start to see how the different elements, whether it be utilization related or project efficiency or multiplier or revenue factor or markets going up and down, GDP spends, certain clients in certain areas, you can start to see where they're spending money, and that slowing all that down and taking it in and making better decisions is for the benefit of everybody long term.
Wise words indeed, Matt. And thanks so much for joining us today. And thanks to our viewers. Please like and subscribe. And we hope to see you next time on the street.
Do I have to fill out a timesheet after this? Matt said I didn't.
Yeah. Manually.